Hello. This is Wendy Rose Williams, and welcome to Waking Up Spiritually. I'm here with Gregg Kirk, and we're so happy you have found us, perhaps through our Waking Up Spiritually Facebook group, where you can join us live the second and fourth Sunday. The days they're all running together, don't we know that? Second and fourth Sunday of the month at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. And you can also join us via our Zoom link if you're not a member of that Facebook group. So I'm a certified spiritual teacher as well as past life regressionist who trained with Dr. Brian Weiss, among others, Reiki Master Energy Healer, and an author. And today we're going to be talking about intuition. So happy that you're joining us either live or later on via the archives, because we do, Gregg kindly saves all the programs to our wakingupspiritually.com website. So Gregg, I'd love you to introduce yourself and also do our wonderful raising and protecting of our energy for the program.
Yes, I'm Gregg Kirk. I'm a practitioner, an energy healing practitioner who does both in-person and remote energy healing sessions over the phone that get into all kinds of things from the main idea is to look for blocks, whether that energetic blocks, whether that be attachments or past life traumas or current day traumas. You can find me on my website at greggkirk.com. So that's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. Yes, okay. So let's keep our discussion free and clear of any negativity. Let me do a protection ritual that I recite beginning of every energy session I conduct with patients. So we're going to invoke Archangel Michael, Raphael, Saint Germain, all the guides, guardian angels, healing entities, and non-physical beings who have our best interest in mind, including the entities from Constance Dominatio, Yeshua ben Joseph, Mary of Bethany, the Divine Mother, and all the Magdalens, to provide healing, guidance, and protection for everyone watching this broadcast today. We'd like to establish that Wendy and I and everyone watching this broadcast are sovereign beings practicing free will, and we do not give permission for anything or anyone to enter our fields or our bodies without our consent, and we do not allow the mingling of our energies during this broadcast. Thank you all.
Okay, super. Well, today we're talking about trusting your intuition. And intuition is such a fascinating topic because some of us are fortunate and we've got like a really strong intuitive sense, whether you might feel it in your heart and something just feels right for you, or you might feel it in your gut. I mean, people can kind of feel their intuition different ways in their body, but often there's like a physical feeling. And other people, our intuition, that wise part of ourselves, can feel a little wishy-washy or a little detached, or it's just not as strong as we want it to be. And I think of it like a muscle, like many things. And just as we work with it and purposefully work to have it be stronger and test it out and play with it, and just keep working with it, we just learn to trust it. And then the next level can become, do you act on it timely? Anything you want to add to that, Gregg? What does intuition mean to you? And can you kind of help set the stage?
Yeah, I'll talk about the mechanics of intuition. So kind of the seat of your intuition are in two parts, physical parts of your body. One is your pineal gland. So that's literally your third eye. So people who have what's called a calcified pineal gland, how does that happen? What is that? Well, calcium actually builds up on your pineal gland and blocks your intuition. Let's just put it that way. It even blocks your ability to have what's called a mind's eye. So that's your ability to imagine things visually or tune into something visually. For those who are practitioners, that's your ability to see somebody's energy body or do astral projection, that kind of stuff. That pineal gland is calcified or blocked up. Actually, doesn't even have to be physically calcified. It could be blocked by some sort of energetic block. Then you're going to have trouble, and you're going to have trouble not trusting your intuition because you're not going to be receiving much either. Your heart chakra is another area where you feel It's kind of like a transmitter and a receiver for energy. So when you walk into a room, if you're very sensitive in the heart chakra area, you can feel somebody else's energy, whether it's good or bad, or actually, it's, there's no good or bad in the energy
It's
world.
just alignment. It's, whether you're vibing in the same place with it or not, maybe.
Exactly. So somebody could be having a different frequency of vibration that they're transmitting from their heart chakra, and it could be a conflict with yours or attractive to yours. So and this is the kind of thing where, where people talk about why I trust your gut, or I feel it in my gut. It's really more or less your heart chakra. That your heart chakra is a large chakra, and it goes all the way down and sometimes overlaps your solar plexus area, which is another chakra. So trusting your gut. So those are the two kind of mechanical transmitters, receivers of intuition. And then I think there's a fine line between receiving information, actually getting information and receiving it. Okay. So we did an entire episode on connecting with your guides.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the non-physical beings who are around all of us. We all have a team of guides who are around us. They could be hundreds, or they can just be a dozen or so. There's usually, what I've noticed when I do energy work with other people, their guides tend to be around the dozen or so active guides. And their role is to help us. Sometimes we call them guardian angels. They're here to help us through situations. So sometimes they are actively engaging with us and tapping us on the shoulder, or dropping
those nudges.
right, dropping something under our nose, like, wow, where did that come from? When you notice that kind of thing, that's almost like a mild intervention of a guide communicating with you. So if your pineal gland is open up and your heart chakra is open up, you're going to receive that information more clearly than you would if you're shut down. If you're so what can shut down your pineal gland? Well, engaging in social media, watching TV all the time, having a belief system that that you're a limited being, that that these things are not open to you. Also, tap water in the United States has fluoride in it, and fluoride is very well known to calcify pineal gland. Using fluoride toothpaste is another thing. So anything that has fluoride in it. There's actually a set of pharmaceutical drugs called the fluoroquinolones, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. So things like Levaquin, and actually there's an entire list I can share with you of drugs that have, we're talking about dozens. Some of them are antibiotics and some of them are antidepressants. They have fluoride in them. So, I've talked to patients of mine in my Lyme community where they've taken a certain drug, and these are people who have been open, they've been receiving intuitive thoughts and messages, and then they take these drugs and they lose their ability, or it's greatly inhibited. So that's actually a physical thing that happens. So anyway, getting back to this idea, I think there's kind of two parts to intuition. One is when you're seeking something, you're going out and looking for information, versus the information is coming to you. Usually it's coming from your guides. So that's maybe, I don't know how important that distinction is, but that's what I've noticed in my life. Sometimes I actually meditate and I try to visualize things, or I seek information out. And if I start seeing things, I think, the point of this broadcast is, what do you trust? Because sometimes when you are doing something like a meditation where it's a fact-finding meditation, you're trying to visualize or connect with something called the Akashic record. Let me talk about that for a second. There's a number of different terms for this idea. There's a concept that there is a band of experiences and information that surrounds the earth. By band, I mean it's literally like a belt of energy and information. Some people call it the Akashic record. Some people call it the noosphere, Noosphere. The idea is that this is a belt of information that has all of our experiences, all the experiences ever experienced, on Earth, human or whatever. So, this is what psychics tap into. This is what, some energy workers tap into, where, you see things like past life stuff, or that maybe not related to you, just experiences that have happened on the Earth. There's people called remote seers who literally can do this kind of work, where they can, their intuition and their pineal gland is so open that they can actually sit down and somebody gives them, literally coordinates on the Earth. So they don't know anything about this. They'll just say coordinates, and then I'll give them a certain time. So they can actually go forward or backward in time and zero into these coordinates and open up their intuition to, and they tap into the Akashic record or the noosphere. Yes. And they can give you deep information about what's going on, what was going on, or what will be going on, in the future and the past. So that's some deep stuff. But just, I guess, a quick story about trusting my own intuition. I'll give you one I actually shared in our group a while ago. I do, energy work with people. I do remote sessions, and there's two sessions that I was doing where I was not trusting my intuition, because, I think everybody who is tapping into this type of stuff has the experience of the first time you see something, or even the first few minutes you start to see something that might be intuitive, it may seem a little weird to you, or it doesn't make sense. So I was doing a remote session with a woman. We were just getting started on her session, and I saw her in a situation where she was putting on this giant sombrero, like a party sombrero. And there were some people around her who were laughing. And I saw it, I'm like, well, I'm not even going to tell this woman about it. But her guides were nudging me like, no, tell her about it. So I did. And unfortunately, I went a little too far, and I put my own impressions on what I thought. I said, have you ever been to Mexico? Because I thought, well, giant sombrero, she must have been to Mexico. And to make it worse, she had. And she had.
Now it's getting more confused.
It was getting more confused, because she's like, well, I've been to Cancun, and I've been to Playa del Carmen, and I never tried on a giant sombrero there, so I don't know what's going on. So anyway, we went round and round about it, and then we just gave up. So, and I felt like I was crazy. I thought, I saw this thing, and I didn't trust that I had actually seen it when the session was over. I thought, wow, it disturbed me, because I thought, wow, can I actually see things that aren't true? And then they look very vivid. And then thankfully, it was only a day or so later, she sent me a picture after the session and said, Gregg, here's a picture of me. 3 years ago, I was at a wedding, and friends of mine were around me. We tried on a giant sombrero and took pictures with it. And
she had forgotten.
Thank God she had forgotten. Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was another situation like that with a young woman where I saw her on a raft, a unicorn raft, when she looked like she was little. So it was earlier in this lifetime. And it was another situation where I thought this, and I laughed to her. I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but were you ever on a raft in the middle of the lake that was a unicorn raft when you were little? And she said, no, can't remember. And I said, well, this is why I try not to mention these things, because, it makes me sound crazy. And this one took longer. This took 3 months. And she just sent me an email. She didn't even, the headline of the email, the subject line was, you're not crazy. And it was just literally a picture of her and a friend. They weren't 9, they were 12 years old, and they were on a unicorn raft. So, it's just, you gotta, I'm still working with this myself, because literally just the other day I did a session with somebody where I saw something, it did not immediately make sense to either of us. And I said, all right, well, let's note this, because maybe sometime this year we'll find out what it's about.
Right. But Gregg, having had many sessions with you myself, I mean, I think it's a lifelong learning for all of us to learn to trust our intuition and what we're experiencing and being shown and hearing. Because you share things with me regularly and you're like, okay, I don't know what this means. I mean, you're just very truthful, but you're very accurate and you're very clairvoyant. So you're often seeing something and I then know what it means. I can feel it or sense it, or my guides talk to me. I hear them. I'm not especially clairvoyant, but I have other senses that come in. And
Right.
then it's just like we work the puzzle together.
Yeah, it's
And
very,
it's
very rewarding to work with you because I'll just begin to see something and then your guides are talking to you at the same time. So we're making
right.
sense of it like right away. That's
Exactly,
much more satisfying.
exactly. And I think everyone can get to that point. You just have to trust it, even though it seems wacky or weird, because maybe your guide is presenting as Elmer Fudd. And then
Right.
I'll have the person tell me, often it's like in a group workshop, you know, if I'm working with them one-on-one, they can tell me right away. And they're like, I'm not doing this right because I'm getting Elmer Fudd or I'm getting the Roadrunner. It's like you are doing it right. There is no wrong. Just ask your guides, ask your higher self, can you clarify? Give me more information. Here's what I'm seeing. And then it shifts. You know, it just came in that way, like to make us laugh or to make us smile. But you have to get over that piece of, I'm doing it wrong.
Right.
And you just have to let go of, I'm going to look or sound foolish, because there's such a huge lesson in that letting go of what will other people think. That's definitely one of my life lessons. I think it's a life lesson for many of us because we've been socialized and conditioned so hard, you know,
Yeah.
in so many ways. We've been de-wilded. It's not a word. we've just, you know, we've had like the earth connection taken out of us in so many ways. We've had the wild, the primal self taken out of us in so many ways, and we just don't trust our instincts. And that's where intuition comes from. And a couple quick tips on the pineal gland, because Gregg outlined that really well, what can cause issues with it. And if you just picture the pineal gland as like a walnut-sized organ in the center of your brain, and you can just do some visualization exercises. I do this with clients in every session. If they are able to tell me, because I ask them and they know, even though they've never heard of the pineal gland before, many of them, I can ask them, does it need decalcification or is it already great? And, you know, we can leave it alone and move on. So we'll like use windshield wipers on it, or the guides will come in and they'll sweep, or we'll bring in a beautiful waterfall, or they'll do silly stuff. It's kind of like a time date stamp. I remember the soft scrub commercials with the scrubbing bubbles. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, relate to that. I guess those commercials were on for a long time, or they're around the same age as me or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, I can feel that. And you know, it's gentle and it's like kind of funny, and it helps them start doing it. And then we move into some physical things. Basic 101. Do you need to drink more water? And do you need higher quality water because of Gregg's point? And their guides will tell them specifically in the session when I'm working with them, do they just need something simple like a Brita filter and just put it through a charcoal filter? Or do they need something, you know, more fancier or complex for their filtration system in their house? Or do they already have a fridge filter and they're just, you know, getting it right off the dispenser, the water dispenser on the outside of the fridge? And then I'll say to them, when's the last time you changed that filter? And a lot of people will say, I have no idea. And then the guides will say, yeah, you need to change that. And now just start, you know, changing it regularly. Don't wait for the refrigerator to tell you or not tell you that you're supposed to be changing that filter. So those sorts of things, but just water and getting more to organic fruits and vegetables if they're not already making that choice. Those used to be so much more expensive, at least in Seattle. It used to be like 2 or 3 times the cost. And now just, I look at my list, I make sure my grocery list before I go in, I make sure there's lots of fresh fruits and vegetables on it. And I just look at the list and then I picture the big red sale signs that the store has for when an item's on sale. You'd be surprised how many of the things on my list that were organic are now on sale. And I can get them for like the same price or cheaper than than the non-organic. And also just avoiding the processed foods. You know, it's not a great diet to be living on salami and pepperoni. You know, we may have been raised on those as those are great sandwiches or whatever, but you know, that on white bread, that is not your best diet for most people. But you know, if we're raised on it and haven't changed our habit, it can really be dulling our intuition and our ability to hear, because that's part of that you know, calcification that's gone on. So just some quick points there. I just wanted to give an example or two of some times when I knew something was going on intuitively, but it was hard to act on. The big one that comes to mind was back in 2004 when I was purchasing the current property that I live on. I purchased it with my mom. I was going through a divorce. I had just left my husband, got two little kids. You know, things are really in a lot of turmoil. And mom and I were making a pretty big leap to go ahead and purchase this home together, as well as it's going to be a huge lifestyle change for her. It meant moving across the country and for us to live together again now as adults for the first time. That was going to be a big change, and you know, with my two children in the mix. And also we were purchasing the home to be able to build our dream home, so it had a second lot attached to it, so the dollars were pretty big too, and it was a lot of change. And what happens in the middle of all this stress and chaos and change, and I'm really trying to listen to my intuition? I lose my job right in the middle of it all. And my dad is diagnosed with cancer, and he says, I don't want to go for treatment. So it was a triple whammy all at once. And I literally lost my job on the day that the house was closing. So that was fascinating. So obviously I could have backed away from it all and said, no, this is not meant to be. This is too high risk. I shouldn't be doing this. I could have decided maybe this is a sign I'm meant to stay in my marriage, because that's what my former husband thought it meant. My mom thought it meant, hey, you're supposed to move back to the East Coast to Boston where I am. So I was just being pulled like multiple ways. And I could just hear my intuition saying, stay the course. You got to do the scary thing. You got to do the hardest thing. And that's going to be the best solution for you. So I prayed. I just had to focus on how do I go through now what I know is going to be a layoff and negotiate that. And I'm really interested to see, is the lender going to check with my employer one last time like they're supposed to do? Well, evidently they didn't, because I closed on a home. I closed on, like I said, two pieces of real estate. It was a double lot, with no job. So it was one of the boldest things I've ever done. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And that's it. It worked out well, but it took years to get it all squared away. I found out later that there's a marvelous tree on my property that was holding the energy for my mom and I to come back to this property. We live in a duplex that we built, and that tree is right outside my bedroom window. And I also found out years later that my mom and I, as well as my cat, had all lived on this property before and had been pushed off it by settlers when the West got settled. We were both Native Americans, she and my cat was a deer at that time that was, you know, running free, and obviously, you know, much broader range than just this property. But that was an example of following my intuition when it was really, really scary, because it's like, what business do I have? Single mother, two children, no job, no child support, and no alimony, and I'm signing this big loan. So that was a big one.
Oh, yeah. That's...
Have you had
Totally.
examples like that of times where you've followed your intuition, even though it was hard to do, or whether you've not followed it and it didn't go well? Like I had a friend tell me he knew he wasn't supposed to buy a car. He knew he wasn't supposed to do this big upgrade, but he did it anyway, and it really had some poor consequences for him.
Yeah, I've also noticed almost a sequence of events that happens with me. Now I'll say it, and it probably won't happen, but but it's happened enough that I've noticed a cycle with me where happens a lot with. I have a practice for Lyme disease that I started, which that alone was a leap of faith. So I left the corporate world and I started doing consulting in the world of web development and web consulting. And my guides were like, nope, you're not going to do that anymore. So I thought, all right, well, now is the opportunity for me to just really do what I want. Because up to that point in my life, I always had one foot in both worlds, where I had one foot in the safe and easy corporate world, quote unquote safe and easy. That's the way it appeared, honestly. Keeping my leg in that world beat me up pretty bad, and I got Lyme disease, and I learned a lot from that experience with how much negativity there is, where you forfeit your freedom for quote unquote safety, which is what I did. But then doing something totally out of the box and doing I've not been trained as a doctor. I don't have any certification as a doctor. I was trained by Dr. Lee Cowden, who has a protocol that helps Lyme patients, but that's all I had. And of course I do energy work as well, but hanging my shingle out that first year was a huge leap of faith for me. That something very confusing happened. So when I first did it, like the first couple of weeks, I didn't have a lot of patients, but then all of a sudden I had this run of patients. So much so where I after about 2 months, I thought, wow, this is going to be great. I was kind of adding up the money, like I'll actually make as much money as I did, if I pull in this amount of money per day of, what I made when I worked a corporate job, and I made a comfortable living. The money part was comfortable. Everything else about it was very uncomfortable. And then everything dried up after about 6 months. Like all of a sudden, just out of the blue, I had no clients, I was paying rent to this place and not using it, not using the office. And it was very upsetting to me. And I had this moment where I was like yelling at my guides. I was saying, God damn it. I did what I thought you wanted me to do. I thought you were guiding me this way. What the hell happened? Now everything is dried up. I'm losing money running this business. I'm not making money. I'm losing money. And I really had this breakdown moment of where I was mad. I was, I felt like I wanted to cry, but I did, I felt utter defeat. And then within a few days of that, boom, it was boom town again. I had more, clients than ever before. Opportunities opened up to me. And I think and I've seen this before, where for me anyway, there's this.
Was it the emotional surrender?
Yeah, apparently I needed to do that. Where there's a bit of your faith is tested. So when you go ahead and you do the leap of faith, you trust your guides and you do the thing that was frightening to do, it's not going to go great. It's going to go great for a short period of time. And then they're going to throw something in your path to rattle you, for you to double down on your faith. Because this has happened to me more than once, where I've done things where I've stepped out of myself, trusting my intuition. And then it was like, okay, I knew this was the right thing to do. And then, whoa, all of a sudden, boom, something really
right. Next level.
Yeah, unsettling happens. And I'm like, what the hell? I thought I was supposed to do this. And then you just kind of dust yourself off. You just kind of, you go inward. You don't like, and honestly, you know, for my guides basically later communicated with me, like, that's part of your journey, is to freak out and to swear, you know, because I was yelling, I was, you know, and they're like, that's you don't just grow sitting there, you know, in the lotus position meditating. You know,
Right. It-
that's one way to, you'll get a certain amount, you know, you'll get so far doing that, but really the true test is when the rubber meets the road and you have bad experiences with people and places and things, and it's your
Challenging experiences.
growth
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are presented with these growth opportunities. Tom Kenyon, who's a guy I have a lot of respect for, his channels,
Yes.
he calls them
Yes.
FGOs,
Uh-huh.
effing growth opportunities,
Right. Right.
because that's
Exactly.
how they always feel. You know,
Exactly.
they're a hard pill to swallow, but when, you know, anyway, so I've noticed this more than once in my life where
Hmm.
I've, you know, like, as I'm feeling my way intuitively through my life's path, I will follow the guides, and then they take me down this alley that seems like a dead end. And then I realize I call it a refocusing opportunity. So where maybe, and I always have realized this, where I thought, oh, this is the way it's going to be. And they're at that moment, they're like, no, it's actually going to be even bigger than this, but we're going to scare you first.
Hmm.
And you know, we're going to make you seem like everything's going wrong, and then once you sit back and relax and lean into what we're showing you, it's going to get even better than you could have imagined.
Exactly. It's that repeated pattern of surrender and knowing that we're going to go into like that void, like that reset point. So I've learned, because I think most of us who are solopreneurs, in these sorts of wonderful service areas where we're, you know, serving as psychics and healers and hypnotherapists and writers and, you know, whatever it might be, you just go through these periods and you have to learn, you can't predict when they're going to be. And I'm learning more when they do come to kind of like pull up and say, okay, is this a time for me to, you know, do I need to be working on my health, or do I need to be working on my home, or, you know, are there things that have been like kind of neglected because I've been so busy with clients and business development or writing or, you know, whatever it might be. So I've just learned to try and lean into that. And I've learned the guides often help clear my schedule because they've got that greater wisdom, and my higher self too, you know, it's right in part of that team. My eternal soul is just brighter than, you know, the individual incarnation that's me right here now is Wendy Rose Williams, because she's got a bigger picture. But often I'll learn, oh gosh, well that happened because my mom really needed me, you know, because we're going through a lot of caregiving right now in prep for her to have a total hip replacement. So that's why my schedule really lightened up. And, you know, now it's getting, you know, busy again now that I know when the surgery is, and I can, you know, block a couple weeks in there to, you know, really be available to help her. And then I, you know when I can be busy with clients again. But I have another example that was really interesting regarding intuition. I was sitting in a restaurant one time, and I was really noticing the waitress and just looking at her tray, because she'd come over with, you know, all the glasses on it of water and drinks and, you know, things that people needed. And I just kept focusing on it. And my guides kept saying, pay attention, pay attention. And I'm like, okay, why? You know, this is something I've seen hundreds of times, but they just kept saying, pay attention. And so I did. I was just focused on her whenever she was anywhere near me with that tray of glasses. So within about 5 minutes or so of, you know, and she'd been to our table and, you know, brought glassware on and off it several times. But within maybe 10 or 15 minutes of first starting to get these pay attention messages, she dropped the tray. And I saw it in slow motion before the tray started to go. And my guide said, now. And it was very interesting. I had no instinct I was going to do it, but I just kind of put my hands up, kind of like in a shield position. And I wasn't trying to shield myself because I wasn't worried about the glass coming to our table. She was a little bit further away. I didn't want the glass to hit her face. And that was what they were telling me to shield. And it was very interesting because it's only happened twice in my life, but I felt like I was helping do like a little energy ball of protection to keep that glass away from her face. So she did end up getting like a tiny cut on her hand, and it was just like literally a bandage, and nothing else, and no one else was impacted by it. But it was interesting how for like, maybe 15 minutes or so before it happened, my intuition was saying, keep watching, be ready. So that was just really, really kind of an interesting experience.
I'd also like to point out, Wendy and I talked about this briefly before we got on the call, that not only do you have non-physical guides around you, if you have pets, they in the old world they used to call them familiars. So a magician
Yes.
would have a familiar, like a parrot, or a bird would sit on, or a cat or a dog. So we have them. Owl, yes. The animals, and by the way, this is something that I've just started to do recently. It's one of those things where a patient came to me for a session, and then they said, well, actually how it happened was the patient contacted me and said, I need to reschedule my session. I just found out my dog has lymphoma, so she was really upset. And I said, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity for you. Let's see if you're feeling so strongly. I just had this intuitive feeling, talking about intuition. I had this intuitive feeling to not, that it wasn't going to be going against her will on this. I thought, I think there's an opportunity here to look at the energy exchange between you and your dog, because if you feel so tied to your dog that actually there might be like a cord or something that we need to look at, because maybe remove that. That was my initial instinct.
Yes.
But actually what happened was it went beyond that. It turned out we did a session on the dog. So I've never done that before. And I said, I don't know if I can do it. And it ended up being just like a session with a human. It was
absolutely
very, very cool. But anyway, what I got out of that session, like the dog's guides were giving me this information. They basically said that, all of our pets, but dogs in particular, are the shields for us. They come in and take all of the slings and arrows that we feel emotionally. I see it time and time again with patients with Lyme disease, where they're lying in bed all day long. Their dogs are on them. They're absorbing all of their negative energy that they're experiencing. I saw it play out in a physical fashion that was, unfortunately kind of upsetting and disturbing, where I went to do a house clearing at a house at these people not far from me in Connecticut, where there was turmoil in the family. The daughter has Lyme disease really bad, is homebound, bedbound. And the father and some of the other family members think she's just being lazy or crazy or whatever. And the mother actually is had this kind of unhealthy back and forth with her, where the daughter relied on the mother to bring her meals every day, but then would yell at her if the meal wasn't right. And so there was this upheaval going on, this emotional upheaval. And then
that's certainly not conducive to healing and
any kind of healing at all. So, and I'd end up doing sessions on a couple of the people in the house, but the woman said, please come. I think there's something wrong with the house. Like the house needs to be cleared. So I was doing that. And as I did, she said, and let me show you our dog. And she's like, the poor dog is like on its last legs. And the dog was covered in tumors. I'd never seen tumors on the dog's paws, so the dog couldn't even walk right.
oh my
And
goodness.
instantly I realized this dog is taking on every sling and arrow in that family, and just taking on all of the upset emotional, the storm that's going on in that house, and just absorbing it. So anyway, that's one thing about animals. But the intuition that our animals have, I'll tell you what, if my dog's a barky dog if you come into our house anyway, but if your energy is good, my dog will, calm down and come up to you. But if he doesn't like your energy, suddenly my antenna goes up. What's going on with you?
Right.
My dog doesn't like you. Now I'm kind of keeping an extra eye on you. But so I think that's interesting. And it's just a quick story about it. There was one time I was dating a girl in college, and I was over at her house, and we were watching TV, and she got up to go to the bathroom, and she had several roommates. And all of a sudden, when she was in the bathroom, this cat came out of nowhere, just ambled in, got up on my lap, and, I just started petting it. And then she came back in the room, and she said, "Oh my God." I said, "What?" She said, how did Ashley get in your lap?" And I said, "She just came up and jumped in my lap." She said, "Don't move." So she came back, and then all of a sudden in the doorway are 4 of her other roommates, and they're all like, "Oh my God, Ashley got in his lap." Yes. So I didn't think anything of it at all, but they're like, "That cat will not get near anyone. So you must have good energy if Ashley likes you." So that was nice to hear. But the cats, dogs, they are so tuned into your energy that if you have bad energy, they will not. But on the other side, if you got a good vibe going on, they'll hang out with you. So
absolutely. It's so funny you're saying that, Greg, because I'm literally today I'm going to release a separate podcast on that topic with my friend Karen Downing on the Again and Again podcast that she and I recorded quite a while ago, but I'm just releasing it for the first time. And it's exactly on that topic, because the animals are so wise, and they do teach us to pay attention to our intuition, because they've still got their wonderful animal instincts. Like I said, we have just been socialized out of them, or just TV'd out of them, or just we've gotten in these habits where we're just not listening. And again, that intuition can be very surprising. I had a really, really strange intuition back in 2010 when I met the man who woke me up spiritually, who's featured in my first book, in Regression Healing 1. And the very first time after I met him, I could feel, it was kind of like tectonic plates were shifting. It's like, "Oh, Wendy, get ready for an earthquake." It's like time to wake up and get on track here. But the intuition I got was, you need to move ahead with this relationship. You need to move ahead into this romance. It's going to be very, very good for you. You really need it. And he is going to break your heart, and you really need it. And I was like, I couldn't have heard that right. Why would you? I mean, that seems like such a mixed message, but I heard it so clearly, and I heard it multiple times. And I can now say, that was in 2010. I can now say 10 years later, it was absolutely correct. Because we can get to the place where our chakras are not healthy, and we're kind of like duct taping them and baling wiring them, just like gluing them back together. And most of the time, our chakras can be repaired and refreshed and renewed, and we can get them, moving more smoothly and repair them. But occasionally, a chakra needs to be completely replaced. It's kind of like your car being up on the service bay, and they're looking from underneath, and you got it up there in the service bay. And sometimes there's a decision: repair or replace. And my heart chakra needed to be replaced, but I just kept repairing. So that was why I needed to go through that big heartbreak. And it was obviously not fun or easy at the time. I mean, it took years to recover from it, but I rebuilt on such higher ground. And I was so grateful that I heard that message that, like I said, seemed so weird and so conflicting of, yes, go ahead, get into this relationship. It's going to be really good for you. You really need it. By the way, your heart's going to get broken. Because usually you'd say, no, thank you. Thank you for the warning. This is not something I need to engage in. But I mean, it was so clear. Go forward.
We're here to have all of the experiences, not just the positive ones.
Right, exactly.
Those are the FGOs in particular.
Exactly. Now that I have new Tom Kenyon speak. Yeah,
Right.
he's pretty amazing. He lives out near me, actually. He's
Yes.
in the Seattle area. I was at his film premiere the
Oh,
night that they premiered. It wasn't Sounds of the New Earth, something with New Earth in it. But anyway, I was there that night and got to meet he and his wife, Judy. Yeah, they're pretty amazing, and it has not been an easy path. I think anyone that's made that much of an impact, and anyone's welcome to look at Tom Kenyon, KENYON.com. He's a world-renowned sound healer. He's got a multi-octave voice, and he's had some pretty wild, challenging experiences, but he's put out a lot of quality sound healings and CDs, as well as written multiple books. He has all kinds of programs and things available on his website. So yeah, that's interesting that we both knew about him, Gregg.
I'm on his mailing list, so every now and then
Yeah,
he'll get a download from the Hathors.
sure,
So that's a
sure, sure. Yes, I really appreciated the one that you recently shared. I will be resharing that one too. And Tom and Judy, husband and wife team, wrote an amazing book called The Magdalene Manuscript. And that was actually how I opened my Kundalini life force energy, because they had an optional CD that came with it that was a meditation for Kundalini. And that happened to be the one that I used. So that was pretty powerful. And again, that was a process of opening my Kundalini. That was so counterintuitive to me, because I didn't know what it was. I had never read about it. I'd never heard about it. I didn't know what was going on. And so my left brain was very rattled, which, that's where the fear factor comes in. And you're like, what is this? What's going on? But my body knew. My body knew, and I was having a lot of the Kundalini symptoms, which I thought were insane, because I was doing a lot of the involuntary rocking back and forth. And I'm like, what's this about? Why do I have this weird new habit? Like, I feel like I need to do that. And I got so angry a couple times at something that I read on the computer, like reading something on Facebook or reading, that I spit. I felt like this snake rising up, but I didn't know what.
wow.
And I literally hissed and spit all over the computer, over the monitor. And then I'm like, what was that? I scared the bejesus out of the cat, because he was sitting on my lap, and he like landed like 20 feet away from me in the kitchen, and he's looking at me like, I didn't know she was a snake, or I didn't know she was crazy.
Right.
It was so virile, because I never felt like such anger, but it was like this emotional release I needed. And then I looked at it and went, okay, that was crazy. Now I get to go get the Windex and the paper towel, clean up my computer, and sit down and think about what just happened. And then like a few weeks later, I found that manuscript, Magdalene manuscript CD, the meditation, to more gently finish opening my Kundalini, because it was obviously coming up and coming up. And it's not something to fear. It's our life force coming back. And it includes a lot of intuition, it includes a lot of wonderful things, but it can make you feel a little crazy pants along the way, because you can have those sorts of big reactions, and your body can be doing something that you don't expect.
I've heard it referred to as Kundaluni. You get Kundaluni.
I never heard that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
really funny. Yeah, I was also struggling during that time period, because sexuality is certainly a part of Kundalini. It's a part of the vibration, and it's lovely and it's wonderful. But if you're like a middle-aged person and you suddenly feel like you're a 16-year-old, I mean, you got like that many hormones going again. I would get in the car and I could like hardly put the seatbelt on, because it would just be like too much across my breasts and across my body. And I'd be like, okay, guys, we got to ground this energy. And I would ground it more. And I'd be like, also, let's raise the vibration of this, because I need to wear a seatbelt to drive. That's just safety 101. But yeah, it was very, very physical for me. And I think that was needed to like get me back into my body, to get me out of my head. So I think that's why I went through so much kundalini
Yeah.
with it. And again, not something to fear. It's your own energy. It's just coming back in a bigger way. And it's part of raising your vibration and frequency. For me, it was part of moving up to 5D. But like I said, I didn't know what it was. And because it was all the way back 7 years now, is 2013. And so I Googled, once I finally caught on what Kundalini was and learned how to spell it, to be able to Google it. It was scary what I was reading at that time. And a lot of people were saying, avoid it, don't do it, don't go there. You can end up with psychosis. You should go to the doctor and get medicated. And I'm reading it going, what? What? So there was a lot of fear factor around it. And then I did see some more sensible advice, which was find a meditation teacher, find a Kundalini meditation teacher or a spiritual teacher, find some Kundalini yoga to do to help you like integrate that energy, because you've got to be prepping your body. You've got to be raising your vibration gently in a way you can handle it, or you end up with a lot of physical symptoms that are just very uncomfortable. Like Gregg, we just went through one of those and you helped me do the first and only healing where I was swearing because it was so painful, because we needed to rebuild some of my bones. And I know that just sounds crazy, but I knew it. I followed my intuition. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I knew I needed someone to help witness me who wouldn't say you're loony. And it's the first healing I've ever had to, I couldn't stay laying on the bed. I had to stand. I had to go lean on the wall. I had to like get moved. But I was listening to, because there were just like really huge chiropractic type of adjustments that were being made as you and I were on the phone, doing that session together. Yeah. So that was following my intuition, even though my left brain wanted to say, you're a nut. Fortunately, at this point, I know to now just, say to that left brain, you're okay, we're fine, we're safe, I'll take care of you. Come on, little buddy, we're just gonna get through this together. So my ego's pretty balanced as a result of that, because I don't try and turn it away. I don't try and make fun of it. I've heard people say, oh, make your ego go stand in the corner. It's like a preschooler and it's just like a little brat. It just doesn't work for me. It's part of me. I gotta be nice to it.
So we're getting closer to the end of the
Absolutely.
hour, and I wanted I've been going through the questions and comments.
I was just going to ask you that, because there's nothing here in Zoom and I can't see what's on Facebook. So can we add to that to wrap up?
Yeah. So just there's one comment in particular I'd like to mention that Shannon Johnson made, where she says, this is talking about food. The longer you work on your spiritual work, food changes usually come into play. I like to remind clients that you may find removing some favorites that are no longer good for you is difficult. So instead of taking it away fully, remind yourself you can indulge every now and then, moderation in all things. And usually you find you don't crave it as often the longer time lapses in between indulgences. Just a tip as I listen before I head off to session. So
that's I love that tip. Thank you, Shannon. I so agree. I have Shannon's fudge recipe, and it's fudge you can keep in the freezer. And there's just something about the mere fact that it's in the freezer, and then I have to go up and get it and take it out and thaw it. That makes me able to have that as a treat. And I mean, that might last me a couple months, having that in the freezer, versus before I would have eaten too much of it if it was just, the pan just sitting out on the counter. And it's just perfect. So I completely appreciate and agree with what she's saying. Don't make it forbidden. And the cravings do go away over time. I think partly because you're giving yourself permission. that from time to time are going to indulge in it, or maybe you have a really small portion of something. If you're craving that homemade beautiful chocolate cake, well, you don't eat the big old slice of it if you've got high blood sugar, because that really is just dulling our connection. It's dulling our intuition. So maybe you literally have one piece, and if your partner or whoever else around you doesn't have that sugar issue, they can eat the rest of it.
Right. And as your own personal vibration changes, you may find, I found this with myself, that things like fast food that I used to be able to eat and know with impunity.
Yeah.
Not anymore. It was, the decision was kind of made for me on that kind of stuff. And even alcohol intake and other things. Just, it's mainly the processed foods that anytime I have just a little bit of processed food, it changes the way I feel, and my mental clarity. So I don't like that.
Yeah. And you're not giving anything up. I used to think, oh my gosh, people have given all this stuff up. You just retrain your palate, and it really does go fine. I never thought I'd be able to give up, meat and liquor and sweets and breads, and or to, really limit those. But that's what my body needs, and I feel happy and well. And it just really does go well. Just follow your intuition. And I'd just like to close on the note, when you've got really big questions or changes, or an intuition keeps coming through that you need to make this change. I'm definitely going through that. I'm kind of prepping for what I think will be going on is changes on Earth. COVID to me was part one. We're going to have some other big changes, and some of them will be challenging. Some of them will be fantastic, but if you're just not sure, it's absolutely fine. Look for validation, because I'm about to make a big change and it's really making me uncomfortable. So what I'm choosing to do is to get validation. I've not only meditated and done auto writing about it, and it's still coming through. Yes, you need to make this change and make this decision. I'm going to do a past life regression session about it tomorrow, because I know my guides come in and I know I'll be able to channel, and we're recording it because it just gets my little ego out of the way, to have them really fully speak through me. And I know I won't remember it. So that's why we're recording it. But just keep looking for the validation, or work with someone who can help you hold that space. Because as I said, when it's the really big changes, we want to be sure.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My website is my full name, wendyrosewilliams.com. And you're so welcome to go there and to check out other podcasts, as well as on our wakingupspiritually.com website. And you are able to request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment with me there if you'd like to talk more about whether past life regression might serve you, or whether a channeled session with me might serve you. And you'll also see my books that are available there. So how about you, Gregg? Best way to get in touch is your website?
GreggKirk.com, GreggKirk. You can reach out to me there, book an appointment if you have any questions. And my book's for sale. The Gratitude Curve, which talks about my journey through chronic illness and spiritual awakening. So
fantastic. It's such a fantastic book. And there is a chapter in there that Gregg wrote about the past life regression session that we did together.
Yep.
So it gives like a nice summary of that too, because it just understandably, a lot of people haven't had one, and they're like, well, what actually happens in those sessions? So, Gregg did a great job of writing that up.
Thank you.
So thanks, everybody. Such a pleasure to have you here, and look forward to seeing you again on the 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. Bye now.